Good morning and welcome to Women Lead TV, brought to you by Connected Women of Influence. I am Kimberlys, your host of Workplace Transformation Begins With Us. And I am so excited to be talking today about tips for speaking up, speaking out, and being heard. And my special guest is the wonderful Eileen McDarr, CEO of the Resiliency Group. Eileen is an internationally recognized keynote speaker, author, and executive coach, and an inductee into the National Speakers Association Hall of Fame. She is here today to discuss lead hership, owning our power, passion, play, and purpose, and to provide insights on how women can overcome obstacles and speak up and out in the roles they play. And welcome, Eileen. We're so excited to have you today.
Me too, Kimberly. Let's do it.
Yes. And, this is a subject that really has, I think it's always been close to my heart, but it's really come into the limelight even more recently. I was listening to some research on regrets from Daniel Pink, and he mentions the fact that one of the regrets that we have, especially as we hit milestones later in life, is not speaking up enough and not using our voice for our, to speak our authentic truth. And so I'm wondering, for you, how is this a subject that really is close to your heart? What inspired you to talk about this?
Well, first off, my field is the field of communication. And I've been doing this longer than I would ever tell you. And long ago and far away, the way I was hired was through an audio cassette. And the person who hired me, the gentleman who hired me, when we met, he said, "You didn't sound that short." What? So something about my voice gave him an image that I was smaller smaller instead of being big as he saw me. Fast forward to you do video, same thing. This time they meet me and they say, "You didn't look that small on video." What is that? And it's because I owned stage and I looked big. And those two things said to me, along with watching women sit around executive tables or in management retreats, they did not speak up. They didn't own their voice. They didn't own their place in the planet, specifically the stage, whatever that looked like. So I set out to say, how is it that I can help my sisters learn how to use their voice in such a way that they are respected and that their self-worth is valued? And what are the things that we unconsciously do, Kimberly, that keep us back from being heard?
Right. I heard a wonderful talk. I think it's by Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook about the idea that women don't take their place at the table, and so I think it's a really great thing. And I talk to a lot of women across different sectors, and it's something that we struggle with. And so just thinking about also the idea that, what are some of the barriers? Like, what are some of the things I even hear, and I suppose in some respects I've maybe experienced this myself, that women don't always support one another. And so what do you think that's one of the factors? What are some of the things and some of the barriers that are holding us back from taking that seat at the table and speaking out?
First off, I think that now I'm going to speak in generalities. So let me underscore this, because there are people listening to that say that isn't me. I'm going to speak in generalities. I am also going to speak from the baby boomer, the Gen X, those of us moving up. I think that supporting other women will find it better through the millennials and the Gen Zs, who really, understand that we bring a lot to the table. I think the reason we don't sit up is historically we haven't been encouraged to do that. Historically, based upon what our background is, we were quiet, we were nice, we were polite. And so one of the reasons I think that women have not supported other women is that there is the perception that there's limited places. And if I help you get to this, there's not going to be room for me. So I made it on my own. You make it on your own. Our obligation, Kimberly, which is one of the things I love what you're doing. I love what your organization stands for. Is it's saying, how do we help women? Because we bring some great wisdom and some great skill sets that our counterparts on the other side don't necessarily have. And by the way, I just saw yesterday this amazing piece of information. Some 22,000 publicly traded companies in 91 countries said that the presence of female leadership in top positions increased their profitability. 23,000 companies. So we have an obligation for our organizations, but also to claim our place at the table, because no one is here by mistake.
I'm always curious too, in a leadership role, I used to feel like it was about the women, right? We're not doing enough, we're not doing enough. But do you feel like it's also something, it's a joint, it's collaborative, right? It's not just women, taking that seat at the table and speaking up. It seems to me like in terms of leadership, we have a role too. So besides women supporting each other, what's the role of leadership? What does that look like? If I'm a leader and I know I've got talented women that have ideas and I want to encourage them to share those, what are some of the ways that, as leaders we can encourage that?
Well, I think for one thing, it's a teaching component. It's one of the things I do when I'm coaching. If I'm watching how women are talking or not talking or where they sit, believe it or not, where you sit at a table. Now I know we're coming back off of the virtual thing, but where you sit at a table absolutely sends a mental picture to the people around there. What are you intending to do? If I sit over here in the corner and I take notes, guess what? If I go into a meeting, I always, as much as possible, try to sit at the head of the table. Subtly, it says, I'm here to play. I'm not here to just observe. So I think we can teach how, and voices. What do I do with this voice? Remember I said that guy thought that I was bigger than I was? Women need to work with our voices, physically work with our voices. I've heard women, they talk like this. And how are you going to take somebody seriously? All of us, I want everybody to do this. I want you to say, uh-huh. Kimberly, say, uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
That's your natural, strong voice is uh-huh. When you begin to speak, say, uh-huh, and here I am, Eileen, uh-huh. Here I am, Kimberly. The second thing that we need to do, not only with what our voices do, our physical presence, we take up room. We need to take up room. When that guy said, I didn't know you were this small. I want to take up room. I'm not going to sit like this. I'm going to take up room. The other thing is to watch my language. Women have a tendency when we give, I quote, ideas, we say, well, I might be wrong, but, well, I don't know about this, but we make excuses. We put a preamble on what we say and said, here are my 5 thoughts. So I think these are all things that we can learn and practice. And as leaders, how do we help women learn how to use their voice, their language in ways that allow their ideas and their input to be heard?
Right. And I love that, right? I love the idea that, we need to be more confident. This is probably something that we should practice, right? Practice in a safe place, and I love your thought too about, taking responsibility for ideas and what about, because I know one of the challenges women face too is, they present ideas and maybe it doesn't really go forward, but then maybe a male colleague will later present it, kind of take responsibility forward, or they get the credit. How can we handle that kind of a situation, when we are trying to speak up? Because I feel like sometimes that holds women back too.
Kimberly, I have heard that more often, that the woman sitting at the table, whatever that proverbial table looks like, has an idea, puts it out, and they go, mm-hmm. And 10 minutes later, the guy at the other end says almost the exact same thing. They go, oh, that's brilliant. Oh, that's brilliant. I was go, what did I do? Just chop liver? So here's what I would suggest. Okay. This is where you claim your place at the table. So let's say I said blah, blah, and John 10 minutes later says something, and they're going, I would say, John, I am so delighted that you picked up on that idea that I had. Let me see how we can add to that.
Ah,
So I claim, thank you, John. I appreciate the fact that you acknowledged that was a strong point. Let me see what else we can add to that.
I love that idea. And I wonder too, because I've heard in the past that I think it was when Barack Obama was president and the women that worked with him kind of had an alliance, and they had an agreement that if a woman came into the meeting and presented an idea, that they worked together to promote that idea and make sure that it was recognized, that it was given the proper consideration, if you will. And I always loved that. I always thought that was really powerful and a way, for women to support each other and to also, make sure that the proper attention, is given. What do you think about that? What do you think about women trying to form alliances in the workplace or teams just working together to make sure that ideas are promoted the right way?
I only have one thing to say: 2 thumbs up. We need to do that. I mean, and one of the questions is why we don't. So part of it is my own mindset that says there is enough, there's plenty of place at the table, and how can I help you? And I might add, say, Susan, I just heard what you said. I have 3 more thoughts that we should add to this. Let me give them to you. And so I believe that's very powerful. I form alliances with my colleagues, all the time. Sometimes it's just looking at what they posted on LinkedIn and giving back a positive Yahoo, good job that you did that, so that they know that we're supportive of each other. I think it was to our advantage that Michelle Obama and Barack had such a close relationship that they supported each other in what they were doing. You didn't see Barack pat Michelle on the head and say, "Go back to your room now." So that was a great message. But I think for all of us, and Kimberly, I know you do this with your organization. You make a conscious effort of supporting everyone in your organization, men or women, but you've made a special effort to make sure that the women are engaged and have a seat at the table. And I think anytime we can do this, whether it's publicly, privately, in a community setting, in a nonprofit setting, whatever that is, the more we can do that, the better I think our world becomes.
Right. Well, I think it lifts up everyone, right? And you mentioned profitability, and there is a lot of data out there around the fact that, raising up everyone really increases profitability and, performance. I'm curious too, when you go into a meeting and you're going to present, you want to go in and be confident, take your place at the table. How do I want to prepare for that? What are some things that I should ask myself? Are there some things that I should really kind of prep on my own, so when I go in and I'm sitting down for that presentation or that meeting, that I'm really bringing my best self forward?
That's a great question, Kimberly, and thank you for that. I think of a friend of mine who was a good cook, and she would make stew and put all kinds of crazy things in the stew. But then she only served the meat. So here's the lesson of that. We have all kinds of ideas, and sometimes men and women add all these other additional details that keep the meat from being seen. So if you're going to go into a meeting, the question I want you to ask out of everything that I know, what's the meat? What are the 3 most important things I am going to tell you? Notice I said tell you, ideas that I have. I didn't say, let me share something with you. I don't even want to use that word share. It isn't share. I have an idea. Here are my 5 things. I'd like to know your response to them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe even no more than 3 might even be better. So that we don't ramble, but that we are concise. And I think when you do that in advance, then you are absolutely more confident. Make sense?
I absolutely. I mean, I think clarity, right? Really being clear. And sometimes I wonder if, as women, we don't always have the confidence to be really clear in our messaging. And so I think being able to understand what it is that we want to convey and coming into the meeting, that preparation, really being, prepared to put forth those ideas is really wonderful.
The and I think we do this with practice. And I think that's why, they hire people like coaches. You say, help me figure out how to say this in the best possible way. The other thing that we can use to our advantage is facts tell, emotion sells. So I might have three facts, but if I can somehow connect them emotionally, this isn't where I'm sitting there crying. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that there is, the other day, I told my grandmother that there were these three things that we were going to do. And she started going, oh my God, I wish I had known that when I was your age. How many of us have grandmothers right now that said, I wish I had known that at your age? This is what we bring to the organization. I just made that up. I don't know. But there is some kind of an emotional connection that is there. Um, and it's also being confident enough to say, I believe in this enough. If you don't believe it, don't open your mouth. But I can still remember back when Motorola was just having a horrible time. And I don't remember who it was, but he walked into the meeting and he basically looked around the table and said, our product sucks. What? What? And we got to figure out how to fix it. That was an emotional statement that cut through everything. You talk about serving up the meat. He served the meat. And they said, now, what are we going to do to fix it? So I think that we can serve the meat, that we can prepare. And then also it's one of the skill sets that we bring to the workplace, is we also have an interesting ability in emotional intelligence, which is to listen reflectively. So you don't solve the problem. You don't coach the problem, you coach the person. Say, tell me more. Give me some more ideas about this, so that the person feels you're making the connection. When we create connection in our industries, in our communities, in our families, in our churches, that connection also allows us to have a seat at the table, because people know it's not about me. It's about us. How do we understand each other and create that connection?
Yeah, that's amazing. And so I'm sure that people know how to reach you. So please give us your contact information if they want to reach out to you. Eileen, what's the best way to do that?
Well, I think you guys are doing a great job right now, because I see it running underneath our little screen. It says, Eileen, www.factor. If you can spell my name, gang, you can find me. When my grandmother died, I think that was the only other Eileen MacDar alive on the planet. So you can Google me. You can go to the website. I'm really good about responding to email. You will see my cell phone, not the office line. You will see my cell phone on the website, because you just get to me directly. So you can find me on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm there. Spell my name. You got me.
Awesome. Well, there's so much more we could talk about, right? Because this is such an amazing topic, and I'm as anxious to learn more as I'm sure all of us in the audience are. We're just about to the end of our time. So I just want to thank you so much for being my pioneer guest today. It was so fabulous to have you here, and I've learned so much, and I'm going to take back definitely one or two great tips. And I want to thank everyone who has tuned in to be here live. Thank you. And for being part of this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Have a fantastic week ahead. And until next time, keep learning, growing, and exploring.